When I asked for a raise after completing a major project alone, my manager laughed. Raises are for people who add value, not for people who get lucky. He turned to the team and smirked. Anyone can follow instructions if you yell loud enough. I documented every innovation, every decision, every time I saved his mess, and when leadership found out, they offered me his position. He was gone by Friday. I didn't grow up wanting to climb some corporate ladder. I just wanted to work hard, make a decent living, and not feel like I was wasting my life. I don't need praise or awards. I need respect, and the thing is, I used to think those two were the same. But after what happened last year, I know better now. This all went down in Dayton, Ohio, where I worked at a civil engineering firm. Not a fancy company, not a startup, just a solid, blue-collar, old-school place that handled mid-sized infrastructure projects around the Midwest. Roads, pipelines, utilities, that kind of thing. I'd been there for 7 years. Started as an assistant project coordinator, moved up to full coordinator after 3. I never missed deadlines. Never made excuses. I learned everything on the job. Nobody trained me. I stayed late, took the worst assignments, and made sure stuff got done even when it meant covering for someone else's screw-ups. My manager, Russell Pritchett, was the type who looked like he was always in charge. Tall, expensive haircut, loud voice. But he didn't know how to manage people. He didn't know the work. He knew how to talk in meetings and send long, confusing emails that said nothing. He'd show up 10 minutes late to every team huddle, still holding his latte, then act like he was the one waiting on us. The funny part? He kept getting promoted. Russell didn't like questions. If you asked for clarification, he said you were overcomplicating things. If you brought up a risk, he said you were being negative. He loved saying stuff like it's just not that deep or you guys need to just execute. I never pushed back. I didn't want drama. But I took notes. Mental notes at first. Later, I started writing them down. Things hit a breaking point when we got assigned the McAllen Pipeline project. It was the biggest job the firm had that year. Over $2 million. Federal funding. High visibility. A huge opportunity, or a disaster waiting to happen. It started out bad and got worse. The original project manager, Simon, a good guy, had been warning for months that the timelines were unrealistic and the supply chain was all messed up. Russell kept brushing it off. Just keep the momentum, he told him. Simon finally snapped during a review meeting when Russell blamed him in front of a client for something Russell had delayed. Simon quit that afternoon. Walked out, didn't even take his keyboard. The next day, Russell called me into his office. "Look," he said, sitting back in his chair like he was doing me a favor. "You're smart, and you're good at following instructions. We just need someone who can run the day-to-day until we get a new lead on this thing." I said, "Who's going to handle procurement? Scheduling? Compliance reports?" He smiled and said, "Just be loud. People follow instructions when you're loud enough." I should have said no. But I knew if I didn't take it, the whole thing would fall apart and the fallout would land on the rest of the team. So I nodded and said, "All right." That was the start of 5 of the hardest months of my life. No raise. No title change. No support. I worked 60 to 70 hours a week. 8 meals at my desk. Took calls at 9 p.m. from site supervisors. I tracked down suppliers when half our orders were delayed. I negotiated better prices with a local pipe manufacturer in Indiana that saved the company 6 figures. I rewrote the safety compliance checklist when I realized Russell had never even updated it after a major policy change. I did Russell's job, and I did it better. When the project finally wrapped, we were 2 weeks early and about 11% under budget. That never happens. The client was thrilled. The company was thrilled. Russell called for a team lunch. He bought 3 boxes of pizza and 2 liters of warm soda and stood at the front of the break room like he was giving a victory speech. "Well, folks," he said, "somehow we pulled it off. Got lucky, I guess." Then he looked at me and said, "Raises are for people who add value. Not for people who get lucky." He chuckled and added, "Anyone can follow instructions if you yell loud enough." Some people laughed, that fake, forced kind of laugh you do when you don't want to seem rude. A few folks looked at me. Nobody said a word. I didn't either. I just sat there. But inside, I was boiling. That night, I went home and opened my personal laptop. I started gathering every file. Every decision I'd made. Every email I'd sent or received. Every time Russell dropped the ball and I picked it up. Every change order. Every cost-saving adjustment. Every timeline I fixed. I put it all together. Dates. Names. Attachments. I wrote a full project debrief. But not the kind Russell would write, full of fluff and buzzwords. Mine was clear. Clean. Direct. I didn't send it to anyone. Not yet. Instead, I waited. And I kept documenting. Every time Russell missed a meeting, I noted it. Every time he asked me to just approve something without checking the specs, I saved it. Every time he took credit for a decision I made, I put it in the folder. I didn't complain. I just smiled and kept showing up. Then, a month later, the director of operations, a woman named Karen Briggs, not that kind of Karen, she was sharp and didn't take crap, came to our office for a quarterly review. She'd heard the McCallum project turned around and wanted to learn more. I asked for 10 minutes of her time. She gave me 15. I handed her a printout of my debrief and said, "This is what really happened. I'm not asking for anything. I just want you to have the facts." She read it. Didn't say much. Just nodded and said, "Thank you." I went back to my desk and thought, well, at least now someone knows the truth. 3 days later, she called me back in. She'd reviewed everything. Cross-checked my info. Talked to some of the contractors I'd dealt with. It all checked out. Then she looked at me and said, "You've basically been managing a $2 million project on your own." I said, "That's what it felt like." She smiled a little. "We're making some changes to leadership. You've got the respect of the team. Would you be willing to step up into a senior role?" I didn't ask about the raise. I didn't need to. I said yes. That Friday, Russell was gone. No warning. No speech. No party. Just an empty desk. Monday morning, I walked into the conference room, sat at the head of the table, and opened the meeting. Nobody questioned it. Marcy, one of the engineers who'd been there longer than me, looked at me and said, "About damn time." And that's when it really started. Things didn't settle after I got the role. If anything, they got more tense. At first, it was quiet. Too quiet. People were polite. Careful. Nobody wanted to look like they were picking sides. I wasn't trying to stir anything up, but you could feel the tension. Russell had been their manager for 4 years. He'd played politics well. He knew how to keep people loyal, or scared. After 2 weeks, the whispers started. "Did you hear he's lawyering up?" "I heard he's trying to fight the termination. Apparently he's telling people he got forced out by a bitter subordinate." I didn't respond. I kept my head down, worked hard, and made sure every project was tight. But I started noticing little things. People who used to chat with me in the break room avoided me. One of the site coordinators, Jason, who was close with Russell, suddenly started dragging his feet on reports. He missed 2 deadlines in 1 week. When I followed up, he just said, "Yeah, sorry, been swamped," and smirked. Another guy, Matt, started copying the regional director on emails, every little task, like he was building a case that I was too demanding. I knew what they were doing. They were trying to make me look like I wasn't cut out for leadership. I guess it made them feel better. Maybe they thought Russell would come back if I failed. The thing is, I don't play that game. I didn't throw Russell under the bus. I gave facts. The company acted on them. If he was pissed, that was his business. But I wasn't stupid. I started watching my back. Then came the kicker. 3 weeks into my new role, I got a calendar invite. From Russell's personal email. I stared at the screen for a full minute. Subject, lunch, clear the air? I almost deleted it. But curiosity got the better of me. I accepted. We met at a small pub near the office. He was already sitting down when I arrived. Wearing a different suit, but the same cocky expression. You look good, he said. Leadership suits you. I didn't reply. Just sat down. He leaned in. I know what you did. And I get it. But you could have come to me first. We were a team. I laughed. Loud. A team? You mean when you dumped every mess on me and called it delegation? His smile dropped. You didn't have to go behind my back. I didn't, I said. I gave leadership facts. That's it. He shook his head. They're going to regret this. You think this ends with you at the top? That office eats people alive. I leaned forward. You're just mad I cleaned up your mess and people finally noticed. I didn't steal your job. You lost it. His jaw clenched, and for a second I saw something flash in his eyes, not anger. Fear. He stood up. Dropped a 20 on the table. Watch your back. Then he walked out. That night, I found my company laptop had been locked out of the VPN for 30 minutes. Remotely, from someone with admin access. IT swore it was a glitch. I didn't believe them. The next week, someone submitted a complaint about me to HR Anonymous. Claimed I was hostile, insecure, and unfit to manage. I asked HR to show me the report. They wouldn't. Said it was being reviewed. I knew who it was. I started my own folder again. Notes. Screenshots. Logs. Because the fight wasn't over. The anonymous HR complaint sat in limbo for a week. No word. No updates. Meanwhile, I kept running the team and handling projects, but the silence around that complaint started poisoning everything. You could feel it in meetings. People watched their words. Some stopped making eye contact. Then Jason, the coordinator who had been dragging his feet, called in sick for 3 days straight, right when we were doing a walkthrough for a client site. I had to cover for him again. No warning. No apology. Something was up. Friday afternoon, I got a calendar invite from HR. In person. No notes. Just the time and location. I showed up and found Elaine from HR, the director of ops Karen Briggs, and the company's in-house attorney sitting at the table. Elaine smiled like she was trying to soften the blow before it came. Thanks for coming. We wanted to touch base regarding a few concerns raised anonymously over the last couple weeks. I just nodded. Go ahead. They asked vague questions at first. How's the team adjusting? Any challenges since you took over? Then Karen leaned forward. Someone's alleged that you've been keeping private logs on team members, including email activity. Is that true? That's when I realized what this was. Russell was trying to flip the story. He must have heard I'd documented his behavior before. Now he was trying to make it sound like I was the one spying, being shady, building blackmail. I stayed calm. I take basic notes when I manage projects. Tasks, deadlines, status. It's project management, not surveillance. If you'd like, I can show you my documentation. Karen nodded. We might want to review that, yes. I already had it printed. I slid a folder across the table. Inside, my project logs, formatted cleanly, with no names outside of work tasks, no private info, just straight business. I also had an IT ticket from when my VPN got disabled, showing the IP address didn't match mine. Karen skimmed the first few pages, looked at the attorney, then at me. Would you say someone might be targeting you professionally? I didn't blink. I would say someone who used to work here can't stand that I did his job better than him. And he's got friends still on payroll. That landed hard. Karen closed the folder and stood. We'll be in touch soon. By Monday, Jason was suspended. IT had found unauthorized access attempts tied to his credentials. The complaint? Thrown out. They never said it officially, but it was clear someone had been feeding info to Russell. But I didn't feel relief. Because this was no longer just about a promotion. This was about something worse. Russell wasn't done. He'd been quiet too long. No social media posts. No LinkedIn activity. No updates in the local circles. That wasn't like him. I had a hunch and reached out to an old vendor I worked with during McAllen. You didn't hear it from me, the guy said over the phone, but Russell's been meeting with people at Garrison and Holt. My stomach dropped. Garrison and Holt was a rival firm, bigger, better funded, and known for playing dirty. They'd lost a huge pipeline bid to us 2 years ago. The McAllen project. I connected the dots. Russell was handing over every weakness he knew. Every contractor contact. Every pricing model. Every hole in our internal process. He was trying to bring us down from the outside. And it was working. 2 weeks later, we lost a major bid for a county bridge contract. We were undercut by exactly $48,000, the exact savings I'd carved out with that Indiana pipe supplier. That wasn't coincidence. It was war. I knew I had to act fast. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. Russell was gutting our company from the outside. And he was doing it with my work, my numbers, my savings models. He hadn't just stolen from me. He was trying to destroy what I'd built. I called a meeting with Karen and the executive team. I laid it all out. He's feeding inside info to Garrison and Holt. The pricing match on that bridge bid wasn't a guess. That number came from my files. My supplier. They looked concerned, but not surprised. Karen nodded slowly. We suspected something, but we don't have proof. I'll get it, I said. They didn't ask how. I started pulling strings. Quietly. I called the vendor again. He was nervous, but after I promised not to name him, he admitted something else. Russell told them your company has poor cyber practices. Said a lot of your old reports were stored locally. No tracking. No encryption. I knew what that meant. Russell had copies. From his laptop. From the days I used to send him shared spreadsheets because he couldn't be bothered to open the project management app. I still had access to his old company laptop's audit log. I pulled it from IT and found the last backup he made, right before his termination. I got my hands on it. And I found the smoking gun. A PDF file labeled GNH Strategy 2025, RP, with a list of our company's vendors, profit margins, and proposal patterns. It was all there. I took the file straight to Karen. She stared at it for 10 minutes. Then she picked up the phone and called legal. 3 weeks later, our company filed a formal lawsuit against Russell and Garrison and Holt for intellectual property theft. A few vendors were subpoenaed. One testified that Russell offered them kickbacks to share project specs. It was ugly. Public. Loud. And the best part? Garrison and Holt dropped Russell halfway through the case to save face. Claimed they had no knowledge of his conduct. He was thrown under the bus by the same people he tried to crawl back up with. He lost everything. His job. His reputation. And because he violated his termination agreement, his severance too. The last I heard, he was freelancing out of a co-working space in Springfield, trying to land low-level consulting gigs. None of the major firms would touch him. Word got around. Dayton's not that big. As for me? I didn't stay. After it all settled, I gave my notice. Not because I was running, but because I was done. I'd proved my point. I'd fought fire with facts and let him burn himself. I took a job in Cincinnati, running my own team at a firm that respected people who showed their work. Not just those who talked loud. But before I left, I wrote one last email to Karen, thank you for backing me when it counted. I gave this place everything. Now it's time to start clean. Just one request, never let another rustle through the door again. She replied with just 2 words. Never again. And that was the end of it. He said raises were for people who added value. I added enough to erase him completely. And I never looked back.